very well. I've met him a couple of times. He was on for a short while of The Apprentice years ago. Seemed like a very nice person. Don't know him, but he served 8 years in jail. There's a long time to go. Many people disagree with the sentence. He's a Democrat. He's not a Republican. It was a prosecution by the same people, Comey, Fitzpatrick, the same group, very far from his children. They're growing older. They're going to high school now, and they rarely get to see their father outside of an orange uniform. I saw that, and I did commute his sentence. So he'll be able to go back home with his family after serving 8 years in jail. That was a tremendously powerful, ridiculous sentence, in my opinion. And in the opinion of many others, yes.
Do you have confidence in your Attorney General?
I have total confidence in my Attorney General.
Do you agree with his statement that you should stop tweeting about Justice Department
Well,
issues?
people like that, but everybody has the right to speak their mind, and I use social media. I guess I use it well because here I am. I'm here. And I probably wouldn't have gotten here without social media because I certainly don't get fair press. So I wouldn't have gotten here without social media, and perhaps with all of the hoaxes. You had the impeachment hoax, you had the Mueller hoax, you had the Russia nonsense, all scams. And if I didn't have social media, I probably wouldn't be here. So I'm very happy with social media, but I think he's doing an excellent job. He's a strong guy. I never spoke to him about the Roger Stone situation. Roger Stone, just so you know, never worked. He didn't work for my campaign. There might have been a time way early, long before I announced, where he was somehow involved a little bit, but he was not involved in our campaign at all. And I think it was a very, very rough thing that happened to Roger Stone, because when you look at what happened with Comey after a 78-page horrific report, when you look at what happened to McCabe with a recommendation of prosecution, and you look at all of these other people, and then you look at what happened to General Flynn, a highly respected man. His life has been destroyed. You look at a Roger Stone for a tweet and some other things. You take a look at what's happening to these people. Somebody has to stick up for the people. So my social media is very powerful. I guess Mark Zuckerberg just recently said Trump is #1 in the world on social media, which is a very nice statement, I guess. Certainly it's something you can be at least a little bit proud of, but it means I have a voice, so I'm able to fight the fake news.
Has the Attorney General threatened to resign over your tweets? And then also he said that your comments on Twitter are making it impossible to do his job. Are you making his job impossible?
Yeah, I do make his job harder. I do agree with that. I think that's true. He's a very straight shooter. We have a great Attorney General, and he's working very hard. And he's working against a lot of people that don't want to see good things happen, in my opinion. That's my opinion, not his opinion. That's my opinion. You'll have to ask what his opinion is. But I will say this. Social media for me has been very important because it gives me a voice. Because I don't get that voice in the press, in the media. I don't get that voice. So I'm allowed to have a voice.
Do you think he can still do his job with integrity, though? He said
Oh, yeah, he's a man with great integrity. The Attorney General is a man with incredible integrity. Now, just so you understand, I chose not to be involved. I'm allowed to be totally involved. I'm actually, I guess, the chief law enforcement officer of the country, but I've chosen not to be involved. But he is a man of great integrity. But I could be involved if I wanted to be.
Are you also pardoning Bernie Kerik?
Yes, I just pardoned Bernie Kerik, a man who's had many recommendations from a lot of good people. Oftentimes, pretty much all the time, I really rely on the recommendations of people that know them. We have Bernie Kerik, we have Mike Milken, who's gone around and done an incredible job for the world with all of his research on cancer, and he's done this, and he suffered greatly. He paid a big price, paid a very tough price, but he's done an incredible job. And these are all people that you have to see the recommendations. I rely on recommendations. Very important.
Are you planning to pardon Roger Stone?
I haven't given it any thought. In the meantime, he's going through a process, but I think he's been treated very unfairly. Yes.
Reporting about China and wanting U.S. companies to be able to sell jet parts.
Yeah.
Are you not concerned about national security?
I'm very
on that?
concerned about national security. Number one, I'm concerned about national security. Nobody's done a better job with national security than me. You take a look at what's going on. We've done a great job on national security. A lot of countries are a lot different now than they were when I started. But I will say that we're not going to be sacrificing our companies for all of the growth and everything else that they're exploding, they're doing so well, by using a fake term of national security. It's got to be real national security. And I think people were getting carried away with it. So I want our companies to be treated, I want our companies to be allowed to do business. I mean, things are put on my desk that have nothing to do with national security, including with chip makers and various others. So we're going to give it up. And what will happen? They'll make those chips in a different country, or they'll make them in China or someplace else. So national security is very important. I've been very tough on Huawei, but that doesn't mean we have to be tough on everybody that does something. We want to be able to sell all of this incredible technology. We're number one in the world. We want to be able to sell to other countries.
Do you think you're being trusted by Taliban and his ceasefire? And are you confident that peace deal can reach Afghanistan?
We are doing something. We've been in the war in Afghanistan now for 19 years. We've substantially reduced the force, as you know. We're really acting more as a law enforcement agency than we are as a military, because we could win that very quickly and easily if I was willing to kill millions of people. I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to do that. We'd win that so quickly your head would spin. And I'm not talking about nuclear. I'm talking about very conventional. But I'm not willing to kill millions of people. So we are negotiating with the Taliban. We've been negotiating with them for a while. We will see what happens. It's a chance of making a deal. There's a chance. I can't believe it's so quiet all of a sudden. I saw that there's a Senator Murphy met with the Iranians. Is that a fact? I just saw that on the way over. Is there anything that I should know? Because that sounds like to me a violation of the Logan Act. Yeah, what happened with that? Did you read about Senator or hear about Senator Murphy met with the Iranians? Well, they ought to find out about it. If it's true, I don't know. It just came out as I was leaving the car.
Venezuela, sir, do you think Guaido is still the guy to get Maduro out of office?
Well, he's the person that the country right now prefers, and that's what I go with. We'll see what happens. We put additional sanctions on, very strong sanctions, this morning on Venezuela. We'll see what happens. We're watching Venezuela very closely.
And then you asked specifically about Roger Stone, but are you ruling out pardons for Stone, for your former campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and for Michael Flynn, for example?
I'm not even thinking about that. There's a process that people are going through. These are unrelated situations where people have done a great job with very, very strong recommendations, but we haven't thought about that yet. Right now, there's a process. I think Roger Stone's been treated unfairly. I think General Flynn has been treated very unfairly. I think a lot of people have been treated very unfairly. I think the Mueller scam is just exactly what a lot of people are calling, because it was started illegally. It was started by abuse. It was phony. It was a fake dossier. And they went into the FISA courts, and they forged papers, and they did a lot of bad things. So the whole Mueller thing to me is a scam.
Do you think Roger Stone deserves any prison time?
You're going to see what happens. Let's see what happens.
He spoke to President Erdogan the other day.
I think he's treated very
He
unfairly.
spoke to President Erdogan of Turkey the other day. Are
I
you
did.
concerned about an all-out war breaking out between Turkey and Syria?
I did. I had a very good conversation with President Erdogan. I respect him. We have a very good relationship. Yes, I agree. He's a tough guy, but we have a very good relationship. I seem to do better with tough people. But the fact is that he's fighting on Idlib. He doesn't want people to be killed by the thousands and hundreds of thousands. And he called me about that and other reasons. But we spoke about Idlib, and we're working together on seeing what can be done.
What's the solution?
Well, it's a very tough solution. You have a lot of warring going on right now. A lot of warring going on. But I'm dealing with President Erdogan.
On this swing, can you talk a little bit about these coming 3 days, and also why you wanted to fly back to Las Vegas every night to spend the night there?
Well, I don't know exactly the schedule because I don't set the schedule. Largely,
Stay there.
largely the schedule is set by the Secret Service. We do what they want us to. But we're going to California, we're going to Nevada, we're going to Arizona, we're going to different places. And I guess we're coming back here, but I don't set the schedule. I have nothing to do with it.
President, you thought Michael Bloomberg made it with Democrats debate stage tomorrow night. Do you have any advice for him as he makes his first debate?
No, he doesn't need that kind of advice. He's been doing it for a long time. It just seems unfair what's happening to Bernie Sanders, to be honest with you. I watched it happen 4 years ago. And always be careful what you wish for. And I'm not wishing for anything. Whoever it is, I'll be very happy. But it seems that Bernie Sanders and that whole big section of the Democratic Party, or as I call it, the Democrat Party, which is really the correct name, it seems they're being taken advantage of like they were 4 years ago.
What's your campaign strategy for being in Nevada while the Democrats are focusing on the caucuses there?
Well, I'll be making a speech in Nevada, and that will be probably the day before, I guess, as they have it arranged. That seems to be pretty effective. We got more votes than any incumbent president in history in Iowa and in New Hampshire, as you saw. And in that case, I went just before the day before, and I went the day before in both cases, Iowa and New Hampshire. So it seems to be effective. I'll be going to South Carolina. They're working that out now, probably the day before. But, you know, look, we have a big voice, and we might as well use it.
Are you still satisfied with how President Xi is handling the coronavirus?
I think President Xi is working very hard. As you know, I spoke with him recently. He's working really hard. It's a tough problem. I think he's going to do... Look, I've seen them build hospitals in a short period of time. I really believe he wants to get that done, and he wants to get it done fast. Yes, I think he's doing it very professionally. We're also working with him and helping him as of the last few days, as you know.
Some people don't seem to trust the data coming out of China. Are you worried about that?
Look, I know this. President Xi loves the people of China. He loves his country, and he's doing a very good job with a very, very tough situation.
President, Senator Brandon Travelers, do you want to talk to him about the Judiciary Committee doing any investigation?
You know, if it comes up, yes, but we'll see what happens on that. That's really up to Senator Grant. And he is traveling with me. Well, we can have a trade deal with India, but I'm really saving the big deal for later on. We're doing a very big trade deal with India. We'll have it. I don't know if it'll be done before the election, but we'll have a very big deal with India. We're not treated very well by India, but I happen to like Prime Minister Modi a lot. And he told me we'll have 7 million people between the airport and the event. And the stadium, I understand, is sort of semi under construction, but it's going to be the largest stadium in the world. So it's going to be very exciting. But he says between the stadium and the airport, we'll have about 7 million people. So it's going to be very exciting. I hope you all enjoy it. Are you going? Are you going, Steve? I hope so. Are you going, Jeff? I hope you're going, too. Okay? So I'll see you maybe in the plane. How are you? Marriage is good? Huh?
One other thing, is there a search underway for Anonymous? Remember Anonymous?
Yeah, there is. It's not so much a search. I know who it is. Can't tell you that.
Why not?
But I know who it is. But we won't get into it. People know it's a fraud. I know who it is, and I know who some of the leakers are. But some of the leakers don't exist. It's made up by the press. So, you know, they say 9 people have said, or 2 people have said, and those people don't exist. But no, I know all about Anonymous. I know a lot about the leakers, too. We know a lot. In fact, when I want to get something out to the press, I tell certain people, and it's amazing. It gets out there. But so far, I'm leaving it that way. I'll see you later. Thank you. See you on the plane.
And that is the President of the United States getting ready to board Air Force One. Obviously, he's headed to California. He will touch down in Beverly Hills, and he's got an event there, organizing committee with the LA 2028 Olympic Committee. There was a lot to get to there. John Roberts, Chief White House Correspondent, please join me on this. I want to start here. I'm trying to see if anybody else has actually reported, other than the Federalist, that it looks like a Chris Murphy senator met with Iranian leadership, possibly the foreign minister Zarif in Munich. That was a point the president wanted to make on his own, saying that that's why he tweets, so he can get his own voice out there. But let's start there. The president accusing Senator Chris Murphy of violating the Logan Act, which criminalizes anybody's negotiating with a foreign leader or a foreign government without authorization.
Yeah, it criminalizes negotiating with a foreign leader without authorization, but meeting with them, I'm not sure that that could constitute a violation of the Logan Act. Probably open to interpretation. I did see a report that Murphy himself has acknowledged that he met, along with a few other people, with Javad Zarif, the Iranian foreign minister.
The Federalist reporting that too.
Yeah, but the Chris. Okay, all right. This was in Munich last week. Again, I think it would be a bit of a stretch to say that he violated the Logan Act just by meeting with somebody from a foreign country.
So a couple of things that the president was first to ask about. I started there because that's something that he brought up. He said, oh, I thought.
Well, if that be the case, I must have violated the Logan Act and didn't even know that I violated the Logan Act whenever I met a group of Saudi Arabians in 1988 pertaining to Satan, witnessing the beginning phases of the opening of the first seal. I didn't just meet these people once. I didn't just meet these people twice. But I met them a total of 3 different times. In Martin, Tennessee. Right up the road here from where I'm at right now. Less than 10 miles away. So I guess I violated the Logan Act. Even though they come to me and threaten my life. Even though they come to me and challenge my life. You see, it's very obvious that I've been treated unfair too as well, pertaining to everything that has went on in my life. And it would be one thing for me just to sit and blab off a bunch of words that are meaningless. But it's another thing for the individual that's talking right now, in behind the camera, to be able to validate and prove what he's talking about, pertaining to one incident after another incident after another incident. A matter of fact, I just got through getting off the phone a while ago with Lieutenant Burns over in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, asking him about a certain procedure in regards to the drug that was given to me pertaining to Risperdal that caused the unnecessary obesity that now I'm struggling with, pertaining to what went on in regards to Judge Woodall in Trigg County that ordered for that drug to mandatably be put into my blood system, that has caused some sort of a chemical imbalance towards me becoming obese, asking Mr. Burns if he knowed anything about any type of drug that's out there on the market that would reverse that damage that has been done in my DNA. He said that he'd never heard of it. Said that he'd never heard of it, and that he was astonished that the state of Kentucky thought that they could take something in violation of my amendment rights pertaining to freedom of speech and twist it around and cost me 9.5 months, in addition to poisoning my system the way that they did, that the state of Kentucky would actually do something like that. But then, Mr. Burns also asked me if I was still contemplating on coming down to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, pertaining to the 25th anniversary of the worst homegrown catastrophe that has ever hit in America in the next month or so. My reply was, yes, I am still contemplating on going there. I have spoken to various attorneys about my rights. And to be quite honest with you, I have just recently got off the phone with the Memorial Park Service there in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, requesting for them to contact me to see if my charges could be dropped or reversed in regards towards me being banned from that memorial site. So far, I still haven't received any telephone call back in regards towards my request. I don't know if this needs to be a written request. I don't know if I need to get an attorney in Oklahoma to put out some sort of a written appeal, because since 2009 versus where we are now, basically 10 years has went by. 10 years have went by since I have been back on the property of the Oklahoma Memorial Park area. Now, there's no doubt I could still go to Oklahoma and be part of the marathon. And you may say, well, my God, you're out of shape. You're 300-something pounds. You can't run no marathon. There's other things in the marathon that people can be involved in doing. You can set up water stands. You can help do the counting. You can help be an assistant for emergencies in case somebody faints, or they need water, or they need other activities. Whenever you're looking at a marathon in regards to the Oklahoma bombing, one of the worst catastrophes that's ever hit America pertaining to it being homegrown, there's thousands of things that you can do. You can park cars, you can help direct traffic. There's thousands of things that you can do other than me having to go onto the actual memorial park during the proceedings of whatever that they have planned, in which I have no idea what they have planned on the 25th anniversary. I'm pretty sure if I was curious enough, I could probably go online and see some of their plans towards who's going to be speaking and who's going to be attending and who's not going to be attending. I'm pretty sure that I could eavesdrop. I'm going to use the word eavesdrop in finding out what kind of audience that they're going to have that day. But it's not just a one-day event. It's an all-weekend event pertaining to the anniversary, pertaining to the marathon, pertaining to the actual date. And I'm still looking forward of going down there, providing that my health accommodates me in going down there. I'm still looking forward in going down there and doing some more research, maybe having a voice towards my output about what I still believe today versus what I believed then in the original affairs that happened in 2009. I'm still in contact with other attorneys that will help to protect my rights as a citizen, regardless whether it's a citizen of Oklahoma or a citizen of Tennessee, towards being able to go out there and participate in that grievous moment that occurred that was absolutely devastating in so many people's lives, of what actually had erupted simply because of what went on down in Mount Carmel, Texas, in their regards, tying both of them in together. But as far as being treated unfairly, I don't think there's no questions of how that I have been unfairly treated, not only by the Oklahoma authorities, not only by the Kentucky authorities, but also by the Tennessee authorities pertaining to all these irregularities that has went on in my life based around not only freedom of speech, but based around freedom of religion. They have violated They have brought turmoil. They have brought agony and despair into the Windmill Ministries life for the past 30 plus years. It's one thing for a group of people not to believe in an organization or not to want to support a certain organization, regardless whether it be a charitable, non-profitable organization, or it be a federal or a private organization. It's one thing for people not to want to be a part of that organization. And it's another thing for people to violate that organization by attacking that organization. And that's exactly what occurred in Madison County in the year 1989, whenever the Madison County authorities decided that they was going to ruthlessly confiscate a sword that was locked up in a container box from the Windmill Ministries. Not only was they violating the principles of the ministry of confiscating the sword, which wouldn't have been no different if it was a bugle. It wouldn't have been no different if it would have been a purple cloth. It wouldn't have been no different if it would have been a cross. Not only was they in violation, the state of Tennessee in violation of that, but the state of Tennessee has also been in violation towards trying to cast a shadow upon to one of their citizens, as one of their citizens basically being nothing no more than a Timothy McVeigh or a Nichols, pertaining to possibly being under the same shadows of a homegrown terrorist. That's what they're guilty of. The people up in Kentucky, that's what they're guilty of. The people out in Oklahoma, that's what they're guilty of. Simply because I was up there snooping around trying to find out a deeper, more understanding about what had occurred after that I had already been to Mount Carmel interviewing those people towards what had occurred. You know, there's nothing in the law books about being your own private investigator. There's nothing in the law book about that. The police force will try to use the analogy, well, you're stalking. To where if they're doing it, oh, you're under surveillance. They twist and turn words around of the same meaning, giving it a different intent. And what they're trying to do is cover up the truth. I don't know if the things that Donald Trump just got through talking about, of whether or not they be factual or truth. And to be quite honest with you, at this point in time, this juncture in my life, I don't see that it matters one way or the other, regardless whether it be the Prime Minister of India, the Prime Minister of China, or the Prime Minister of Afghanistan, or the Prime Minister of South America, pertaining to what's going on right now presently down in I think it's Honduras or somewhere down in South America. I may have this little country wrong. You know, these things are not for me to have to worry about. This is not part of my pay grade towards me having to worry about people in all these different parts of the world. That's Mr. Trump's position that he holds towards being the President of the United States of America. My position has always been a spiritual position pertaining to end-time biblical Bible prophecy. And to be treated as unfairly as I've been treated, as far as I am concerned, Donald Trump ought to offer some sort of, I don't even know the proper word. I don't know if it wouldn't be a pardon, because I've actually never done nothing to break the law. But according to them, I have, pertaining to a threat that never occurred with George Walter H. Bush's life, a threat that I never occurred pertaining to Mr. Burns, the police officer that I'm talking about, the Lieutenant Burns, out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. There was never no threat engaging the police officer or the memorial site in Oklahoma. There never was any type of threat pertaining to any type of police officer here in the state of Tennessee that the New Kentucky Era newspaper in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, printed out on their front page in saying that I had threatened to decapitate a Tennessee police officer, which was nothing more than a mere pure lie. I have never threatened any of the LBL Kentucky Law Enforcement Agency guards in regard to what went on in my life up in the state of Kentucky. I have never threatened to do any type of physical harm to any of our landmarks, including bridges or dams in this country. And to be treated so unfairly simply because of my stance that God has given to me in the spiritual world is truly, truly unfair towards what has went on. And I know, as time goes on and as I use my platform to be able to tell my side of the story, eventually there will be people that will want to know more about what has occurred in an unjust, demonizing way to the founder of the Windmill Ministries, of the individual that's speaking to you right now. I truly believe that there will be a group, there will be a sincere audience, there will be a Joel Osteen congregation, there will be people that want to embark and engage up in partnering up with the Windmill Ministries towards trying to rid or eradicate evil in its truest form here, not only in America but throughout the world, not only in the supernatural spiritual form but also in the physical form. I truly believe that there will be a group of people that will stand with the Windmill Ministries ultimately in the end to make sure that the fulfillment of all the biblical Bible prophecies shall in fact be fulfilled, regardless of who, what, or what group that may be against what I've been engaged in for the past 30 plus years. That according to the Bible, Jesus said that all the gates of hell could not nor would not prevail against His will or against the kingdom of God. And by me knowing that I'm in the will of God, the very hand of God, I know that these things will materialize ultimately in the end. And all this other suffering and all this other bickering and all this other hoodooing that politicians as well as preachers and people has been involved in, they'll all pay an account for their actions one day. They will all give an account, beginning with the Neal family over in Kenton, Tennessee, of the family that basically had it within their arm's distance, within their fingers' distance of being able to mentor the individual that's talking to you right now, but chose voluntarily, chose consciously that they was going to go up against the very will of God. In other words, going back to the point of origin, where all this began in my life, started right over about 7 or 8 miles from where I live, going in a western direction across the Obion River over in a little town called Kenton, Tennessee. the white squirrel capital of, I guess, the nation. I know it's the white squirrel capital of Tennessee, but as far as I'm concerned, they need to take their mascot, if you want to call it a mascot, of their white squirrel, and they need to change the color of him to a black squirrel, because what the town of Kenton done and what that they are guilty of does not need to be looked upon in a pure white source, but what they need to be looked upon is a black, dark, demonic force in regard to what various politicians and various pillars of that community done, going all the way back to 1983. And of course that helped to brand me, to put me where I am today, towards all these other false accusations and all these other false intrusions that has happened to the lifespan of the Windmill Ministries. Be it as it may, I'll speak for myself, just like Donald Trump said. If it wasn't for social media, he wouldn't have that opportunity of being able to voice his opinion about various things and various subjects. Well, that social media platform doesn't just reside any longer to kings and queens and presidents and senators and very, very powerful rich people, but it also resides with the smallest of the smallest. People that's never had the privilege of being in some of these positions. That social media platform also goes across the board towards being equal to all of those who wants to get on it and tell their story. And that's going to be the only thing that's going to add life into the Windmill Ministries, is for me to tell the truth, in validating everything that I'm talking about and in proving it once more on black and white, and trying to gain the moral sincerity from society that will say, hey, this individual that's talking, this individual that's been engaged in this was not just a fly-by-night thing. People should have taken more consideration. People should have taken more a serious approach about what this individual was involved in. Of course, there's going to be a lot of pain and a lot of suffering between now and then, obviously, because I'm still dealing with a type of Mexican standoff throughout the community that still to this day does not want to support the ministry that supports peace and utopia, love and grace and forgiveness that the Bible teaches. To this day, they still frown. They still give a cold shoulder. They still snub their nose up to the Windmill Ministries. So eventually, I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know if it's going to take a great disease. I don't know if it's going to take a pandemic. I don't know if it's going to take an earthquake. I don't know if it's going to take more droughts, more floods, more whatever pertaining to sorrows, divorces, and people with AIDS and people with medical problems. I don't know what it's going to take, but eventually I feel like, and I know that it will, that there will be a group of people that will rise from the ashes that will help to preserve the rights of biblical Bible prophecy fulfilling itself in the last days, regardless whether they agree or promote or like the end-time biblical Bible prophecy or not. You know, whenever I first got engaged in all this back years ago, and I first read the book of Revelations, it scared me to death. You know why it scared me to death? Because I had my priorities in the wrong areas. And until one becomes acquainted with the true teachings of Christ in regards towards weep and lament when one comes into the world, and to rejoice when one leaves the world, providing that they've had a relationship with God and they're going to a better place, a heavenly place, until one gets their priorities right, in the same alignment that's in the Bible, odds are they're probably going to look at the book of Revelations the same way that I did 45, 50 years ago and say, wow, this is a horrible thing that's going to happen to humanity. And in that perspective, it really is. It is a horrible thing that's going to happen to humanity, pertaining to the end of this world and God creating a brand new world. It is a horrible thing that's going to happen to humanity, pertaining to all the famines and the floods and the earthquakes and the horrible, horrible things that the Bible describes that's going to happen to humanity in the last days. For all these be the beginnings of God's sorrows. It is a horrible thing, looking at it from a fleshly standpoint, from a fleshly perspective. But from a spiritual perspective, it's a wonderful thing. It's a glorious thing. And that's the part that obviously I never set sail. That's the part that obviously I never convinced. That's the part obviously that I never sunk through to the peers of my day, of the people that was older, that could have had the initiative of helping or supporting the Windmill Ministries, that obviously they thought that they was going to escape death in some sort of way. And death is unescapable. None of us is going to escape death. None of us. Unless you're fortunate enough to be on top of a house or to be in a field, for you not to take up thy cloak during the time that the second seal is opened, and there's no one around you that's going to take your life, and you're living a close enough godly life with God that you be transfigurated from mortal into immortal in the twinkling of an eye, pertaining to the second coming or the first resurrection that the Bible talks about. Because in total there'll be 3 resurrections. There'll be 2 resurrections of the fleshly and 1 resurrection of the spiritual. That all will give up its dead. Everything will give up its dead. Even those who have died and perished in the sea. That everybody will stand in front of God pertaining to the great white throne judgment on that third and final resurrection. And of course, if you know anything about the Bible at all, that's whenever God will destroy the old world and recreate a new heaven and a new earth, which is a very, very glorious thing for humanity, to have the privilege of being able to live with a supernatural evangelical being and with a God that loves his people to no end. I'm going to listen to the rest of this, and then we're going to let this go. Thanks for listening. Good luck to the rest of us. And as I have said before, a lot of the stuff that Donald Trump is engaged in, he's doing a lot of good. In the business arena, towards trying to turn things around, he's doing a lot of good.
Would have more questions today.
But there's also doubts towards what was his intent pertaining to some of our allies. And I'm sure eventually that will come out. The truth always does. It may not come out in the time that you want it to come out, but eventually the truth will set you free.
And he began to bring up the President of the United States topics he wanted to get to. He did spend a lot of time on the former governor of Illinois who was impeached back in the mid-2000s, 2008 or so, from his office over corruption. And he says he served 8 years plus. He served enough time. He thinks he didn't get a fair deal, and he wants to commute his 14-year sentence. The president making news on that. It was breaking news this hour. The president confirming it himself. And then also asked whether or not, by the gaggle of reporters, should General Mike...
See, like that deal right there? I don't know nothing about that. I don't know what went on. I don't know the consequences of when it went on or where it went on. I don't know nothing about that headline. Nothing. Some people May have kept up with it. I don't know, kind of like keeping up with the NASCAR circuit. Some people don't never keep up with NASCAR, but some people do.
Michael Flynn be pardoned, and the president said he also had not been treated fairly.
And speaking of NASCAR, we do want to keep the individual that wrecked his car in prayer pertaining to him being able to heal up properly. That way it won't take him completely out of the season of racing.
Fairly. Johnny was asked about Roger Stone as well. He said, I've given it a lot of thought. Meanwhile, he has to go through a process.
Yeah, and that process comes to a head on Thursday when he is scheduled to be sentenced by federal district judge Amy Berman Jackson. The initial recommendation of 7 to 9 years by the 4 federal prosecutors who are the line prosecutors in his case been downgraded by the Department of Justice, but they really are leaving it in Judge Jackson's hands. The president has been asked several times whether he would consider pardoning Roger Stone. The president has always demurred on that. It's interesting to point out, too, that while Blagojevich will have his sentence, his 14-year sentence, commuted, he will not be pardoned, at least now, but we're told that he will be released from the facility in Englewood, Colorado, where he has spent the past 8 years, sometime later on today.
Before I have to let you go, we head to the top of the hour here to wrap things up. The president said he had full confidence in Attorney General Barr, and that the tweeting that the AG takes exception to, he says, I tweet because it gives me a voice, and in the media, I don't get that voice. That's the president.
Yeah, and the president has long talked about that. The interesting statement that I thought the president made in all of that was, I do make his job harder when I tweet, acknowledging that Barr does have an argument when it comes to that.
Well, and an argument about that, and also about the fact that, you know, he didn't want to be, he said he wasn't involved in this process, but that he has a right to.
Which can be to an advantage to a president, or can be to a disadvantage to a president, depending upon how much information he bleeds out to the American people in the world. We're no longer playing with the same set of rules like we was 20 years ago. And if you go back even 40 years ago, there was basically only one major entity here in America pertaining to CBS, ABC, and NBC. Now you have multiple entities of news agencies that are steadily putting out information, and some of the information that they're putting out, just like the information that they put out about me up in New Kentucky Era newspaper up in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, was nothing more than a bunch of lies. Some of the information that the Oklahoma authorities has talked about out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, have been nothing more than a bunch of lies. So in order to set the record straight, for the benefit of the doubt, sometimes you got to take the bull by the horns like Donald Trump is doing towards actually creating your own platform that this is how I believe, this is why I believe the way that I believe, this is how I understand what has occurred, and you can either agree with him or not agree with him on either some of the topics or most of the topics or none of the topics. That's your privilege. The same way with the founder of the Windmill Ministries.
How he feels about it. You know, as this is making news today, there are other names. We saw the former 49ers owner, Eddie DeBartolo, also pardoned today. The president making a statement in all of these.
The interesting thing about the president is, unlike other presidents, he doesn't wait until the end of the year and come up with a slew of pardons. He does them sort of piecemeal. But I'll tell you, one of the most interesting things was to see Jerry Rice and Jim Brown here at the White House today with that pardon.
Wow. John Roberts, thank you very much. I'm Harris. Here is the Daily Briefing.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and we begin with a Fox News alert. President Trump dropping a number of bombshells before heading out west. The president commuting the sentence of the disgraced former Democratic governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich. But that was just the beginning. The president also defending his use of social media despite any effect it might have on his attorney general. That coming after a judge refused to delay sentencing in the case against the president's longtime ally, Roger Stone. There's a lot to unpack. It all just happened. Let's go to Brett Baer. He is anchor of Special Report. And I'm sure, Brett, you were listening to all of that as I was. Let's just start with the commutation of Rod Blagojevich. That is something that the Blagojevich and his wife have long advocated for. He's been in prison for about 8 years. He had about 6 more years to serve, and the president saying he doesn't have to serve the rest.
Right, the commutation that was already signed, that he was just announced, now going for the former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. It was something that had been batted around and talked about in White House circles. Again, a Democratic governor of Illinois. His wife, Blagojevich's wife, made a personal appeal to the president, and the president in that semi-news conference on the tarmac, as he often likes to do, said that he relied on the recommendations, and those are specific written-out recommendations from various different people on behalf of each one of these people he's either pardoning or commuting the sentence. The other one we saw was the former owner of the San Francisco 49ers.
Well, and there was also Bernie Kerik. He was the commissioner for the NYPD. Got into a little bit of trouble, had to pay some fines, but he will actually be pardoned. So the commutation and the pardon is different. The commutation says you don't have to serve the time, or that you no longer don't have to finish out the rest of your term. But sometimes you can be given a commutation even before you go to jail. The pardon allows you to basically wipe the slate clean, and that was what Bernard Kerik was able to get as well.
Also, Michael Milken. We are hearing these names that are getting either commutations or pardons. As you point out, a pardon is kind of a full pardon is wiping the slate clean, and you didn't have anything on your record going forward, and you're out. Commutation, you stop. You get out of jail, you don't finish the rest of the term.
There's a lot, obviously, when I worked at the White House, I know that there's a lot of lobbying that goes on from people that have meritorious cases for why they think somebody should be pardoned, sometimes not so meritorious, and I think that presidents are a little bit wary of being lobbied and maybe getting themselves into a bad position. There's also the case that there's a lot of people who might be deserving of a commutation or a pardon, but they don't have friends in high places.
Right. I mean, look back to President Bill Clinton and the pardoning of Mark Rich, and how much trouble politically that eventually ended up causing him. It's a sticky situation when you have people lobbying or doing things on behalf of these people trying to get commutations or pardons. He was asked on that tarmac about Roger Stone and whether he would pardon Roger Stone, and he said he has a process to go through, but he is going to continue to say that Roger Stone has not been treated fairly. That suggests that he's at least considering it. He says he hasn't thought about it. But I, too, John Robertson, the last hour, saying he found it interesting that the president said he acknowledges that he causes the Attorney General a lot of trouble.
Yes, in fact, I think we have that sound of President Trump talking about the Attorney General Bill Barr and his social media use. And if we could play that, do we have that? Okay, great. Let's play that for Brett.
The Attorney General is a man with incredible integrity. Now, just so you understand, I chose not to be involved. I'm allowed to be totally involved. I'm actually, I guess, the chief law enforcement officer of the country. But
and I want to stop right there on what he just said. I agree that he's the chief law enforcement of the country. And it's up to him of whether or not he wants to be engaged or not engaged. And whenever it comes to the things that I was involved in out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma in 2009, I'm very aware of the problems that I kicked up whenever I brought transparency in regard towards it being a major cover-up to the Attorney General, the governor at the time, the lieutenant governor, and other head of state officials out there in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I'm very aware of the problems that developed because of me exploiting what that I come across as far as a major cover-up. But keep in mind, since then, there has been many other entities that has come out with the same factors. There has been many interviews that's come out in regard to, if the investigators would have known this, and this, it would have turned this, and this around, and we would have had a different outlook on what actually occurred. That's correct. You know why? Because you did not look at the whole truth. Instead of just looking at part of the truth. And that's what happens in a cover-up whenever you have a group of people that don't want to thoroughly investigate something properly like they should, and leaving the people hanging on a cliffhanger of not knowing whether or not what their officials have told them of it being completely accurate, or it's nothing more than a pure mere mortal lie. And the fact of the matter is, they only told part of the truth because there was a Ryder truck. There was 2 people, actually 3, that engaged in ammonia nitrate pertaining to the incident that started to unfold 25 years ago, soon to be 25 years ago, out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. But they did not thoroughly investigate where the vast majority of the damage actually come from. And that's where I become a thorn into their side. I become a thorn in what that they was trying to pull over. And because of it, I will probably not be given immunity or a privilege to go back to the memorial site out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Now, according to Mr. Burns, Lieutenant Burns, Dennis, you could probably go out there during any other time, any other event, and as long as you was low key, and as long as you didn't say nothing to nobody, and as long as you didn't stir up nothing, you could probably go out there and walk around just like anybody else and take pictures of the reflection pool and be engaged in a tourist type activity. It didn't matter if you was with a church group or if you was by yourself, and probably wouldn't no one never say a word. And I'm like, yeah, Lieutenant Burns, I could always walk out there wearing a dress, dressed up as a woman, wearing a wig and having makeup on too. But what would that be saying about me pertaining to my character if I was to try to pull the wool over somebody's eyes like that? That would be like me going back to First Baptist Church up here in Martin. The people that banded me from First Baptist Church in Martin, or me going back to Central, the church that I was a member of. That would be like me trying to sneak in unorthodoxly and either become a visitor or a guest. And it would be very deceitful. It would be deceitful in me trying to do something like that, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do that. If you cannot accept me for who I am and what I am, and if you cannot admit that you made a mistake about me to the degree of giving me a pardon, regardless whether it's Central Baptist Church, First Baptist Church, or all these other churches that has bad-mouthed me and degraded me and demoralized me, and not just churches locally, I'm talking about churches out in Kentucky, churches out in Atlanta, Georgia, churches out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. If you can't be man enough to say that you made a mistake about this individual, then you don't have to worry about me sneaking in your back door. As the old saying goes, if you're not welcome, you don't have to tell me but once that I'm not welcome. And it's pretty obvious that I'm not welcome in quite a few areas. It wouldn't be the first time that an individual hadn't been welcome for whatever reason. Even certain presidencies in running for election hasn't been welcome in various states and various parts of the country because of what they stood for. So it's not the first time. It's not nothing uncommon for people to have strong feelings about somebody that's not wanting them to be around somebody. But once more, that does not give that group of people the right to attack that individual or that group. Just like you don't have a right physically attacking Donald Trump. Nobody has a right to attack another individual towards doing bodily harm to them based around you don't like certain things about Donald Trump or like certain things that Donald Trump believes in or talks about that he approves of. You don't have the right to violate other people's rights. He has his right. I have my right. Other people has their rights. I feel sorry for the people in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, towards what they had to go through in regards to a major cover-up that happened out in Mount Carmel, of how that they lured them people, how that they entrapped them people in buying a bunch of guns that they never should have sold guns to begin with. I feel sorry that the people in Oklahoma wound up getting caught up in the middle of all that. And that's exactly what happened. They got caught up in somebody else's affair that happened, I guess, give or take, about 350, 400 miles away from downtown Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. They got caught up in that. They got caught up in an affair that was completely out of their territory down in Texas. And it costed them severely. It costed them dearly. And it's still costing them, pertaining to what occurred out there of the 51-day standoff that occurred down in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas. And until the whole truth comes out, I will probably never be welcome back at the Memorial Oklahoma City Park site. I'm just making gestures, but they haven't called me back, and it's been now about 3.5, 4 hours since I made contact with them. I thought about calling them back in another hour or two, but then I'm thinking, well, maybe I need to wait until tomorrow. Give them time to talk. Whoever's in charge of the park out there, who's ever in charge of security out there, give them time to make their telephone calls and scratch their heads and say, oh, Mr. Jackson made a telephone call. He's wanting permission to come back down here to the memorial site on the 25th anniversary. What do you think about us doing that? And I'm pretty sure that I'll either be rejected or accepted in my request real quick. But as far as me even wanting to go back to Central Baptist Church or First Baptist Church or any of these other people that has kicked me out and treated me like a red-haired stepchild, no. They don't have to worry about me ever sneaking around their back door or ever making a request towards me going to them and me requesting for me to have permission to go back either as a guest or a visitor back into their arena or back into their atmosphere ever again. Now, if they decided to come out here and knock on this door and try to make amends, then that may be different. But as far as me begging, me being a beggar, because I got news for First Baptist Church in Martin, Tennessee. I got news for Central Baptist Church there in Weakley County outside of Martin, Tennessee. That I guess that they have deemed it as being in the city limits. I don't know, because it's so close to Westview High School out there. But I got news for them. I don't have to beg them to worship my Lord and my Savior to anybody, because I can do that right here where I'm presently at. I don't have to have their permission to be able to kneel before my God and to ask God for favor and to ask God to continue to be with me and to thrive with me and to do the things that God wants me to do. I don't have to ask for their permission. In addition to all these other churches that may very well accept me into their audience, even though they may not agree with me, even though they may not understand me, at least they have enough cordialness about them that they're not going to be as rude and as inconsiderate as some of these other churches and some of these other radio stations around here that should have the pantsuit off of them, pertaining to how that they have jeopardized my rights, how that they have jeopardized my Constitution, beginning with Kenton, Tennessee, and what went on in Madison County whenever they first confiscated the sword symbolizing peace on earth from the ministry. Once more, we're dealing with a group of people that didn't want peace. They talk about peace. The white man speaketh out of both sides of his mouth. He talks about love. He talks about peace. He talks about utopia. But at the same time, our divorce rate has steadily increased. Our debt, our national debt has steadily increased. Our problems have steadily increased. Our abortions have steadily increased. Our weather patterns have become abrupt and steadily increased. All these things have went in the wrong direction in the past 30 years towards peace and utopia. I wonder why. I wonder why.
Chosen not to be involved, but he is a man of great integrity. But I could be involved if I wanted to be.
But
He's a man that's supposed to be in great integrity. Just like a lot of these little towns, it's got these judges and got these people that's supposed to be over their courts. They're supposed to be people of integrity. But once more, if they was supposed to be people of integrity, that's got all these integrity, that lives by the law of integrity pertaining to their policies, how come had none of them stopped and knocked on none of my door? How come none of them has called me up and said, Mr. Jackson, we made a mistake about you. We need to clear the air here with you. How come the court system up here in Weakley County hasn't reimbursed me for me being in jail for 37 days and had to shell out $650 illegitimately, simply because my brother and I had our eye on some children that was being abused across the road, across the street here? How come the state of Kentucky hasn't come back after them violating my principles towards what went on not only in 2010 with their federal courts pertaining to me being evaluated in MCC in downtown Chicago by Dr. Dana for almost 6 months, but how come they haven't come back pertaining to what went on in LBL over 2 telephone calls that was non-threatening and that was in an apologetic form, to the point that they wound up giving me Risperdal that made me swell up like a frog and made me become obese? How come I haven't heard nothing out of these individuals neither? How come I haven't heard nothing out of the Oklahoma authorities pertaining to them falsely accusing me of something that I wasn't guilty of, plus them doing property damage to my automobile? I'm going to tell you why. Because we're not dealing with people with true integrity. We're dealing with people with so-called integrity, Mr. President. Let's back it up one more time and let's hear what he had to say just about 45 minutes ago. Just about an hour ago.
Yes, the chief law enforcement officer of the country, but I've chosen not to be involved. But he is a man of great integrity.
Great integrity. He's a man in great, and he might be. He may be. But I know this. There's a lot of them that's professed to have great integrity, that after you get through analyzing their lives towards what that they have done and what that they have permitted for others to do, not only are they not people with great integrity, they're people that don't have integrity at all. They're sly dogs. They're in sheep's clothing. They're people that profess to have great integrity, but inwardly are nothing more than raging, ravening wolves. And I'm going to end it right there to my viewers, because this conversation just went on with the President of the United States, February, I think it's the 18th, 2020, just about an hour ago, while he's on his way out to California and then Las Vegas. I don't know for sure. It's got something to do with some money issues, business issues, but the word integrity, loyalty, dedication, duty, all these are good fancy words. Don't get me wrong, these are nice, beautiful words. But the people that stand in behind those words have proven to be nothing more than failures, because we're dealing with a country that's over $23 trillion in debt and over, 22 million incarcerated prisoners. Obviously, something has terribly went wrong here, to the point that we have all this corruption, all these massive shootings, all these divorces, all these abortions, all these indebtedness. Obviously, something has occurred here, that white man speaketh with forked tongue. He talks about peace. He talks about love. He talks about grace. But where are all these things? I don't see these things materializing. Not here in America. They may be in other parts of the planet, but they're not materializing right here, especially in Northwest Tennessee. Thanks again to my viewers. Good luck to all of us, and shalom. God bless.